Is here to talk the politics of immigration and more this morning, host of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Hugh Hewitt. Good morning, Hugh.
Hi, Allison. How are you?
I'm well. So we see some real points of distinction in terms of how the candidates feel about immigration. Everything from deport them all to things that sound like a path to citizenship. So who do you think is getting it right in terms of winning the GOP primary? Who do you think has the hearts and minds of where voters are?
Well, I think this will come up as a major issue on our December 15th debate when we're in Las Vegas. The last debate really before Christmas and New Year's and the bowl season takes over. So I expect that there will be some conversation about it between now and then. But I have to disagree with the premise of the question, Allison. I don't think it's that deep of a divide. Almost every one of the candidates agree on building a very strong, long wall, as does Mrs. Clinton. Most of the candidates agree on some form of regularization, whether it requires people to leave and come back or stay in place. I think actually the more interesting question to emerge from 2 nights ago is the debate that broke out between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz on one side and Rand Paul on another over national security and America's role in the world. And on this, all of the Republicans are united that Mrs. Clinton had a catastrophic tenure at the Department of State, that America's in retreat around the world, that the nuclear triad has been decimated by President Obama's neglect. And I think you'll see them come together on that issue and talk about priorities there. So I tend to resist and push back on sort of Manhattan Beltway narrative that this is going to tear the Republicans apart. It's interesting. It certainly matters to maybe 10% of the base more than any other issue. But 90% of the Republican primary electorate wants to know who can beat Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And that will be the defining issue coming forward.
I'll take your cue, Hugh, and we can pivot away for a second to talk about that moment, because it was a really interesting moment between Marco Rubio and Rand Paul in terms of military spending and who is the most conservative. So let's play that and you can tell me who you think won.
And yes, I do want to rebuild the American military. I know that Rand is a committed isolationist. I'm not. I believe the world is a stronger and a better place when the United States is the strongest military power in the world.
Marco, how is it conservative? How is it conservative to add $1 trillion expenditure for the federal government that you're not paying for? How is it conservative? How is it conservative to add $1 trillion in military expenditures? You cannot be a conservative if you're going to keep promoting new programs that you're not going to pay for.
Hugh, how is it conservative to add $1 trillion expenditure?
You see, that is what I want to focus in on December 15th. I'm not going to tell you who won, Allison. I'm going to tell you that I hope to have in my question set a bunch of questions about the nuclear triad. How many aircraft carriers do we need? Right now we've got 10. The president's let it slip to where we cannot have 3 deployed full-time. We just found a new contract from Northrop Grumman for the B-3. Boeing has appealed that the B-3 is a strategic bomber. We definitely need a strategic bomber. We have to replace the Ohio-class submarine. It costs a boatload of dough, more than the entire shipbuilding budget has in it right now.
Okay, so I mean,
so this is what
like,
I want to get into.
Sure, but I mean, what you're saying sounds like you agree with Marco Rubio. You think that Marco Rubio won that point. That's his. Those are his points.
It shouldn't. It should. As a debate panelist, I do not have a preferred answer. I think that the Republican primary voter wants to know exactly which each of these candidates think about American greatness, and they want to know how they're going to contrast that with Hillary Clinton presiding over America's retreat in the world. You know who won that debate actually the most was the guy in the first debate, was Chris Christie on 2 nights ago, when he said about China that he would fly Air Force One over the artificial island, something he first said on my radio show on September the 2nd. And Hillary's name came up 40 times, Allison. Yesterday, she said in New Hampshire that she tried to join the Marines when she was First Lady of Arkansas, or when she moved to Arkansas. An extraordinary claim that's, you know, simply not. I hope you investigate it as much as you investigate Ben Carson. But I'll tell you that what people are going to jump on is they're going to distinguish how the Republican field wants to support the military versus how President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton have gutted the American military.
Hugh,
so that's where I think the December debate will go.
Okay, a couple things. We are looking into Hillary Clinton's story. She's said it more than just yesterday. She's said it several times over the course of her career. And much like the Ben Carson story, it's hard to pin down these things that are decades old. It's hard to find the person who can definitively say, yes, that moment happened. So while Jeff Zeleny did report on this, and they are looking into it. We're going back to her campaign to say, can you help us figure out how this happened and when this happened and exactly what happened? But I want to get back to what you said about immigration, because there is a rift.
Allison, can I?
Yeah, go.
I think you need to confront the former First Lady and the former Secretary of State with the same degree of passion and doggedness that you did Dr. Carson. I think everybody in the media has to ask Mrs. Clinton with the same degree of intensity that they asked these Republican candidates. She tweeted out about Donald Trump, it would be inhumane to deport 11 million people. Agree or disagree? People have to ask Mrs. Clinton, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to build a wall? What are you going to do with these people? What are you going to do about the cartels, about the terrorists who attempt to come in from Hezbollah, from the southern border to bomb the Saudi Arabian ambassador in Washington, D.C.? She gets to tweet out because media doesn't push back against her the way that they push back against Republicans, and I'm hoping that changes over the course of the next year.
Hugh, I look forward to doing what you're suggesting. I look forward to asking Mrs. Clinton questions and pursuing her with the same dogged line of questions that we did with Ben Carson. She has not come on New Day. We are asking her to, and I look forward to that moment when she agrees to. But one more thing, Hugh, about immigration, because there is a rift. It's not, I think you're glossing over it a little bit. It's Ted Cruz who is sort of opening this salvo against Marco Rubio, and because of the Gang of Eight, because Marco Rubio was involved with this bipartisan plan with the Gang of Eight, with the liberal New York Senator Chuck Schumer. Ted Cruz is basically saying that disqualifies his plan on immigration. It does sound like that there is a rift developing between the GOP candidates.
Oh, there are disagreements. Absolutely, there are disagreements, and they will talk at great length about them in the December 15th debate, and I'll be happy to ask about them. But every single one of the Republicans has a plan. Mrs. Clinton has a tweet. And so what I think the Republican primary voter wants to know is, who is going to best exemplify what a Republican policy is going forward on smart immigration, strong border security, national security issues? Mrs. Clinton did nothing as Secretary of State, nothing to stop the visa overstay problem, which accounts for 60% of our illegal immigration problem. She did nothing when she was Secretary of State to advocate for border security. She managed to blow the Arab Spring completely. Libya is a mess. Syria is a nightmare. Russia reset button she tries to blame on Medvedev, which underscores the fact that she's clueless about Putin.
Yep.
These are the issues that I think the Republicans agree on, and that's where I want to spend our time on 12:15. Right now, the media is trying to divide the Republican field over immigration.
Yeah.
I think it's my job as a conservative media person to point to the fact that the biggest divide is between the Republican field and Mrs. Clinton, and that she's out of step with America. That's my job.
You've done that this morning, Hugh. Thanks so much for being on. We are looking forward to that debate in December.